How's it going? It's another freezing day in New York City. It's 7 a.m. I peek outside the window. It's dark, it's gray. The kind of day that begs for sleeping in. Hot coffee, binge watching yet another episode of the Great British Bake Off with my wife to avoid having to face that cold weather. I start to question every life decision I've ever made, including why I'm putting on my shoes to even head outside. But I make it to the corner, phone in hand, and for a split second, I think about skipping my workout that day. There's a gym right across the street. It's closer, and I barely have to walk to get there. But that day, I didn't go to the closer gym. Instead, I trudged 15 blocks, 3 avenues, past a dozen other fitness studios, a boutique yoga spot, my favorite donut shop, which sometimes completely throws me off, and I kid you not, even a warm, toasty sauna at the local Equinox calling my name. Here I am going to the same gym yet again. It's a cardio boxing gym, and recently I found myself going here multiple times a week, every week. And it got me thinking, what is it about this place that has me being so committed? What is it about this place that has me being so loyal? The location, inconvenient. The class times, borderline impossible. And to make matters worse, this boutique charges a fat fee. But the second I walk in, there he is. Chris, the trainer, grinning ear to ear. Danny, you made it back. I can't wait to work out with you today. He gives me a high five, and just like that, I wasn't just another guy in a crowded city. I was someone who felt noticed. The class starts, and it's chaos in the best way. Music blaring, people punching, sweat dripping. About halfway through, just as my legs start slowing down, there's Chris. He jumps off his stage, and he runs up to me, and he yells, "Danny, don't you dare stop. You've got more in you. Let's go. Keep going. You got this." The class ends, and I'm wiped, but in the best way possible. My shirt clings to me like a second skin, and before anyone can leave, Chris runs back to the front of the room, where he gives every single person a high five goodbye, and he says, "Great job today. You crushed it. I appreciate you coming in, and I can't wait to see you soon." And every time I leave this guy's class, I leave with the biggest, goofiest, uncontrollable smile like this, because of how Chris makes me feel. Seen and valued. And I'm not alone. This class is booked full almost every single time, 60 plus people deep. I mean, think about it for a second. In a city with a gym on almost every other block, people rearrange their lives to show up for Chris. Why? Because Chris doesn't just teach a workout. He creates an experience that makes you want to show up, no matter how hard, no matter how far, no matter how inconvenient. And it's not that Chris is some magical unicorn or, heck, even the best trainer in New York City. It's because of how Chris chooses to show up for every single person who walks through that door. Now, you're probably thinking, where do we find this Chris guy? Because we need more people like that. But maybe the better question isn't where do we find them? It's how do we create them? How do we create the conditions where high-performing teams become inevitable? When I think about what really matters at work, what people truly need, I always go back to my dad. My dad was an industrial designer, and early on in his career, he started his own design agency, designing tables, lockers, chairs. I mean, beautiful stuff. And back then, you had to sketch everything out by hand. I mean, it was truly art. Things were going well, his business is growing. And when my oldest sister was born, his largest client came to him and said, "Mark, we love working with you. So much that we'd like for you to join us full time, or we'll need to find someone else who can." With a family to feed, my dad made a practical choice. He put his business to the side and he joined this company full time. And over the next 25 plus years, my dad gave his everything to this company, designing thousands of products, generating hundreds of millions in revenue, spending countless years overseas, opening up factory after factory. And when I asked him, "Can you help us find more factories?" his answer always the same. Yes. Thailand, yes. India, yes. Korea, yes. 4 months on the road every single year, away from his friends, his family, for me. Whatever they needed, wherever he had to go, whatever he needed to do, his answer always the same. Yes. And when he hit his 25-year anniversary, as a way of saying thank you for his loyalty, his dedication, his commitment over the last 25 plus years. They decided to honor him by engraving his name in cobblestone outside the company headquarters. So he goes to work that day. They put the stone in the ground. And I'll never forget, even as a kid, being so excited to celebrate this monumental moment. A couple hours go by, my mom's cooking dad's favorite turkey meatballs. My sisters and I are setting the table, the dog's wagging his tail. I mean, there was just an energy in the air that night to celebrate my dad. I see his car pull up through the window, and I sprint to the front door. I give him this big bear hug, and I say, Dad, tell me everything. What was it like? How did it feel? Did you feel like a Hollywood star with your name engraved in stone? We sit down. He put some turkey meatballs on his plate, and I'm sitting there waiting for him to talk, to tell me how it felt, how proud he must have been. And finally, he looked me square in the eyes and he said, Danny, I want you to know that this stone, it's not an honor. It's a reminder that people have been walking all over me for 25 plus years. It stuck with me. Not just his words, but the look in his eyes. He gave so much to that company. But in the end, he felt like just another name on a stone. And it's not that they didn't care about him, but somehow after all those years, they never showed it in a way he could feel. And today, forget about it. If your people feel even a little overlooked, a little misunderstood, a little taken for granted, it doesn't matter how cool your workplace is, how epic the perks, unlimited vacation, kombucha on tap. People today don't sit around for 25 plus years. The resume is updated, a recruiter's called, and a few days later, or worse, they stay. They stay and quietly check out. They stay and coast day by day. They stay and bring a negative attitude and energy to every meeting and every interaction. So after 25 years of feeling that way, my dad made sure I never would. A couple of years go by, I'm sitting in the backyard with my dad. We're talking about work and life. I'm 14 years old, and I turned to my dad and say, Dad, I want to be like you, a designer. How do I build something great in life? He thought for a second. He said, find what you love and you'll build something amazing. Now, at that time, I loved boxing. I was training for my first amateur boxing fight, working at the local boxing gym. And I turned to my dad and said, Dad, let's sell boxing gloves. Now, most parents would have probably laughed it off or patted their 14-year-old son on the head, but not my dad. He believed in it, in me. He said, let's do it. A couple days go by, I sketch a logo on the back of a napkin, draft a business plan as best as I could as a 14-year-old kid. Where was ChatGPT then? My dad helps me find a factory overseas, and 14-year-old me was officially in business. And over the next several years, I'd go on to live my wildest childhood dreams, traveling all over the country, selling thousands of boxing gloves to UFC fighters, world champion boxers, Joe Rogan, and more. But more than the success in the business, the real legacy wasn't the business at all. It was the lessons I learned along the way from my dad, that when people feel believed in, they can achieve the unimaginable. I'd go on to exit that company. I'd launch a consumer product manufacturing agency based out of Hong Kong. So here I am, early 20s, leading a remote, multi-generational global team. And it was clear if we were going to succeed in this business, razor-thin margins, cutthroat industry, I needed to do things differently. And I thought, what if I showed up for my people the same way that my dad showed up for me? And that's exactly what I did. Within 18 months, we built the business to 7 figures, profitable, worked with brands like Traeger, Birchbox, Peloton, Gravity Blankets, and many more. And over the near decade of building that business, I came to understand that. For years, we built teams as if performance comes from talent alone. Hire better, train better, pay better. Yet, burnout keeps rising. Disengagement rising, turnover rising. And while all of those things matter today, that's the ante to play the game. That's the ante to recruit top talent. The organizations that consistently thrive today understand something different. Performance isn't a talent problem. It's a conditions problem. At the heart of every exceptional team I've built, studied, or researched are three core conditions that show up again and again. Leaders who understand how to consistently create these conditions build teams that operate at a completely different level. And today I'm going to share with all of you these exact core conditions to transform not just your team, but the lives of those you serve. Condition one, safety first. I'll never forget one of my first jobs out of college. I was working at a small startup. We sold a sleep supplement a little bit ahead of our time. We were in 30,000 stores and growing. And every quarter, we cram into this tiny conference room to review the quarterly numbers. The CEO would order pizza, wings, the whole spread, as if to say, at this company, we're one big happy family. And in this family, every single person's voice matters. But no matter what, every single time, within 30 minutes of starting that meeting, someone would storm out of the room in tears. Not because the numbers were bad, but because the CEO would snap. He'd yell across the table, pick someone apart in front of everyone, and the rest of us, we just sit there silent, eyes down, hoping it would be our turn next. Eventually, every single person on that team left, including me. The irony? In the absence of safety, you build a culture of fear. Whether you mean to or not, a culture where people fear speaking up and feel their voice does not matter. A culture where people fear making mistakes and fear taking initiative. A culture where people feel undervalued, underappreciated, and eventually disengage. And the dangerous part? It doesn't take many moments to shift the culture. Just once. You let a disrespectful comment slide. You ignore the voice that keeps getting talked over. You stay silent when someone's shut down for raising a concern. In that silence, your culture gets defined. And suddenly you don't have the culture you built, you have the one you allowed. But it doesn't have to be that way. One leader who caught my attention who's built an incredible culture was Nate Randall. Nate was the former CEO of Gab Wireless, a 200-plus person tech company building safe tech for kids. They sell smartphones and watches without any internet. And Nate strongly believes that the best cultures are built on this idea of safety first. And while Nate can't predict the future, and he can't guarantee they'll never have layoffs at Gab, he makes some big promises to his people. He promised them that layoffs would be the absolute last resort. They'd cut everything else, including their senior leadership salaries, before they cut their people. But safety to Nate isn't just about layoffs. He wants his people to know that at Gab, they can come and do their best work, grow, get a consistent paycheck, and show up as their authentic self. And they're doing something right because in the 6 years of building Gab, they never had a layoff. Their turnover was less than 2%, whereas industry standard was nearly 18%. The culture at Gab was so good that when people arrived, they tend to never leave. So what's their secret? Safety first. Safety is the most foundational building block of all great culture. You can pay your people well, you can shower them with praise, but if your people don't feel safe, they'll never do their best work. What I mean by safety is they want to know they're in a safe environment where they're safe to make mistakes, safe to speak up, safe to challenge the status quo, but also safe in their job. And here's where even the best leaders get this wrong. They hear the word psychological safety and they immediately think lowering our standards, lowering our accountability, lowering quality. But safety doesn't lower accountability, it protects it. Because when people actually feel safe at work, they speak up sooner. They admit mistakes sooner. They ask for help sooner. And when those things happen sooner, teams perform better. In fact, Google did their own multi-year study trying to understand the number one predictor of high-performing teams, and consistently, they found the number one predictor was psychological safety. But let's be honest for a second. Building a safe culture, it's hard because culture is fragile. According to Gallup, only 1 in 4 employees say they actually feel safe at work. That means if we look around this room right now, or we think about our teams, 3 out of 4 of you may be holding something back. An innovative idea, the next big breakthrough, or simply just a better way to do something. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably sitting here thinking, Danny, I understand safety first, it's important, but like I can't control whether my people feel safe. I can't control how my C-suite team operates. I can't control how my mid-level managers are showing up. I can't control if there are layoffs or people get let go. And I say to you, what within your power can you do to make your people feel safe? Because none of us can control the macro, but every single person in this room controls the micro. You control whether a coworker's mistake becomes a moment of shame or a moment of growth. You control whether a coworker feels their voice is welcome, whether they've been on the team 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years. And every single person in this room controls what you choose to tolerate, even if that means challenging a coworker, a leader, or simply just the way things are. Because what you tolerate becomes your culture. Not the values on the wall, not what's said during your annual offsite or your all hands. You may not be the most senior person in the room at all times, but if you're in this room, you are responsible for creating a culture of safety first. Moment by moment, it starts with you. Condition 2, deep understanding. So I was in my early 20s building my manufacturing company. My business was starting to grow. We just opened up an office in Hong Kong. We hired our first employee. Her name was Circle. And for the first 6 months or so, Circle and I, we never met. We just connect over good old-fashioned phone calls. I mean, this was before the times of Zoom and Google Meet. And on my first trip over to China to finally meet Circle, I wanted to be hyper intentional about our limited time together. You see, I didn't want to just visit factory partners and take care of business as usual, but I thought, why don't I bring Circle with me so I can get to know her better? And I didn't realize it then, but this one simple decision would be the rocket fuel to take my business to the next level. And on the flight over, I'm thinking, how do I make sure that by the end of this trip, I deeply understand who Circle is? That by the end of this trip, I understand Circle's motivations for wanting to help build my company. And most importantly, that I understand what's most important to Circle. 16 hours later, I land in China and we're off to the races. We go to our first factory visit. We have the most incredible meeting. And at the end, I tell Circle, let's go and eat the local style food. I thought, what an incredible way to break the ice and get to know her better. So we sit down at this local spot. Circle orders the food. And I'm sitting there. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm jet lagged, but I'm excited. I mean, I'm feeling like this is going to be my Anthony Bourdain moment or something. I'm feeling like dumplings galore. Bring it on. A couple minutes later, in the waiter walks. He puts his plate down on the table. I'm looking at it, trying to figure out what it is, and I have no idea. I pick it up. I smell it. Smells like food. And I turn to Circle and I say, Circle, what is it? She says, local style. I said, yeah, but Circle, what is it? She said, duck head. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever eaten a duck's head before. It's not exactly protein rich. You kind of hold it by the beak and you munch a little bit of meat that's on the cheek. And I asked Circle if she liked eating it. She said it's so-so. And I said, okay, if I'm willing to try it, are you? She laughed. She said, of course. She promised that this wouldn't be the last animal head we'd be eating this trip. We spent that afternoon eating duck's head, connecting, getting to know one another more. And of course, it's not about the duck head, but it's about the moment that said, I want to understand who you are. It was about the moment that said, if it matters to you, it matters to me. And I didn't sit there grilling Circle with question after question. I simply went first and just started sharing what I was building, what I was excited about, even what I was nervous about. And that created space for Circle to follow. And for the remainder of that trip, whenever we sat down for a meal, we'd order the local style food and we'd talk about life outside of work, our culture, our traditions, our hobbies, our families, our passions. But it didn't stop there. Those conversations opened the door to life inside work as well. The skills she wanted to develop, the relationships she wanted to nurture, where she was hoping to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now. And fortunately for all of you, you probably don't have to go and eat a duck's head to start to understand your people. But understand this. The more deeply you understand your people in their role and beyond, the more committed they'll be. In my 8 years of building my business, Circle is by far my most loyal employee. She come in on weekends not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Over the years, she was responsible for millions in sales and growth, and she'd often share with colleagues and coworkers how being understood made a material difference in how she showed up. When I finally left my company, Circle pulled me aside because she wanted me to know that if I ever opened up a new business, to let her know I should come and join in a heartbeat. When our team members feel understood, not surface level, but deeply understood, you'll unlock their best. But understanding our people, it is one of the most misunderstood things in the workplace. We think we understand our people because we say hi, we know each other by name, a few nice things about one another. And no doubt those things are good and they are important. And if you're doing those things, you're steps ahead of the rest. But in order to truly understand our people, we need to go deeper than the surface. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably sitting here, but Danny, I know my people. I mean, we've worked together for years. We've been on big projects. We even grab lunch. And that may be true, but do you really know them? And look, you don't need to say it out loud, but just take a minute to think about it. I mean, how many of you can honestly say you or you feel the people on your team can know these things about one another? Do you know each other's strengths, your weaknesses, the projects that light each other up, your passions and hobbies inside and outside of work, your people's partner's name, their kid's name, their 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals? Or do you just kind of know them? Because knowing someone's name is one thing, but understanding who they are, that's everything. And the challenge isn't that we don't want to understand one another. Of course we do. The challenge is that our level of understanding is simply too surface level. And when our level of understanding is surface level, assumptions naturally creep in. And assumptions, they're not just a leadership problem, it's a human one. And it's one of the most dangerous things we could do, yet we do it all the time. I can't tell you how often I hear in my line of work, millennials, that's this guy, privileged generation. Or Gen Z, don't even get me started. Apparently, they expect a bonus at signing, promotion after 2 months, and a freshly brewed whipped matcha latte with a dash of lavender, honey, cinnamon sitting on their desk at 8 a.m. You know, we laugh, but it's these very assumptions that get in the way of actually understanding our people, what motivates them, what drives them, what they're aspiring for, and what's most important to them in that given moment. A couple of years into building my business, I decided to start something completely unrelated to work, a podcast. And while it had nothing to do with my business, I loved it. After hours, I'd flip on the mic and I'd interview incredible people about living an intentional life. And a couple months in, I hit a milestone, 25 episodes. And that same night, my phone rang. It was my business partner calling from Hong Kong. We went through the usual work updates, and just as I'm about to hang up the phone, he says, Danny, I want to talk to you about something. He said, I see you've got this new project, this radio show. Now, for a second, I thought he listened. Maybe he's going to congratulate me, maybe even ask when he can come on the show and share his bits of gold. And then he said, it must take a lot of time and energy. He said, this is a distraction. You have an obligation to me, to the team, to our customers. Every hour should be spent on the business, not this little radio show of yours. I sat there, phone in hand, frozen, because to me, the podcast wasn't a distraction. It was fuel. It gave me something that work simply didn't. But from that day forward, I never talked about it again at work. Never shared a lesson with a coworker. And I tiptoed as I kept recording the very thing that brought me to life. A couple of years go by, I'm out to dinner with my business partner and his friend, a stranger to me. And before the appetizers even hit the table, his friend turns to me and says, Danny, I see you've got a podcast. What's it all about? And my stomach dropped because my business partner was sitting right there, directly in front of me, and I knew this is the last thing that this guy wants to hear about. Heck, I didn't even know if he knew that I was still recording at that point. So I tell his friend just enough to move the spotlight off me, but inside I wanted to tell him everything. My favorite episode, my favorite lesson, the most surprising thing I learned after recording 150 episodes. And before I could even continue, my business partner chimes in and he says, "Oh, that little radio show of yours? Gotta be honest, never listened." First, I was thinking, like, dude, it's a podcast, not a radio show. But instead, I said nothing. Sitting to my right, a stranger, someone I just met, asked me more questions about me, than my business partner ever had. And sitting right there directly in front of me was someone who said they cared deeply about me, yet never took the time to understand me beyond my role. Instead, he assumed. Assumed that if it didn't move the bottom line, it didn't matter. Assumed that his priorities should be my priorities. Assumed that if it possibly took a little bit of time away from work, it was a distraction. What's the podcast in your people's life? The thing that lights them up. Maybe it's not a podcast at all. Maybe it's training for a marathon, hiking, cooking, family, travel. What about inside work? The skills they want to develop, the relationships they want to nurture, where they see themselves a few years from now. If you don't know, it's time we start asking better questions, deeper questions. Like, what's one skill you want to develop this quarter? Like, what's one goal of yours in the year ahead? Let's see, one more time. That's not the fire alarm, right? I think we're good. Imagine all of us having to get up right now and leave. Oh my God, that would be crazy. Look, by no means am I saying you need to be everyone's best friend at work, because you don't. But you do need to understand your people in the role and beyond. Because when you do, you'll unlock a version of them that no salary, no benefit, no paycheck can ever unlock. Condition number 3, constantly connect. Most people connect when a big moment forces it. A promotion, a crisis, a resignation. But real connection can't be something we do here and there. It has to become a constant, a habit. Because people are constantly changing. And with those changes, their relationship with work is going to change. But by constantly connecting and understanding what our people want, what they need, we can tailor and personalize how we lead to best serve them. There are 2 major forces that are going to shape all our people's relationship with work. The first is seasons of life, and the second are big life events. First, let's tackle seasons of life. What I mean by seasons of life is 21-year-old Danny can't possibly be the same as 32-year-old Danny. And 32-year-old Danny can't possibly be the same as 55-year-old Danny. Think about it. 21-year-old Danny, fresh out of college. He's young, he's hungry, he's motivated, he's willing to work day and night if that means getting ahead. A leader who is connected and understands 21-year-old Danny will tailor and personalize how they lead to give him learning, development, advancement, career growth, opportunity. That's how you bring out the best in 21-year-old Danny. Now, 32-year-old Danny is going to look a little bit different. For one, he's married. He's got a beautiful baby, actually 2 now. Sloane's now 19 months. Another one, Henry's now 3 months. A beautiful golden retriever. Any dog lovers out there? Oh, yeah. I'm going to regret saying this if my wife sees this, but everyone knows Luna's kid number 1. But, in all seriousness, 32-year-old Danny is going to be a little bit different. He might want to recalibrate his relationship between work and life to be a more present husband and father. He might be further along in his career, more comfortable in his career. A leader who is connected and understands 32-year-old Danny will tailor and personalize how they lead to give him freedom, flexibility, autonomy, support. That's how you bring out the best in 32-year-old Danny. Now, 55-year-old Danny, I imagine, is going to be very different. For one, every AI bot is convinced I'm going to grow a full head of hair, which is exciting. And I know there's other AI experts here who are going to be speaking on AI. Everyone who's like expert at AI says, whatever you do, Danny, do not upload your blood work to AI. And I could say I've done it like time and time again. And it tells you some cool things. And then when I ask what will I look like in the future, it spits out something like that. So the hair is coming back. I'm aging at a ridiculous rate. And now that I see it on the big screen, I don't know if I'm wearing a shirt or if that's actually back hair. They say the hair doesn't go away, it just moves down. But maybe someone put that into the AI. But in all seriousness, 55-year-old Danny is going to be very different. He might want to come in, check out, maybe. He might want to take his decades of experience and do his best work yet, perhaps. He might want to work on his legacy project or mentor someone earlier in their career. A leader who is connected and understands 55-year-old Danny will tailor and personalize how they lead to give him exactly what he needs. And that's how you bring out the best in 55-year-old Danny. Look, people changing through the seasons of life is a given. But what that change looks like is going to be different for everyone. You might have two people in their 20s, one fighting and clawing for the corner office, and someone else who wants nothing more than to come in, do their work, and get out of the office. You might have two people in their 30s, one who is fighting for that next promotion, and someone else who just had a baby, who still cares deeply about their work, but wants nothing more than to get out of the office in time, to make it home, to feed their kids, and tuck them in at night. And that's why the conversation around the generational divide and generational differences, and Gen Z wants this, millennials want that, boomers want that, it is the wrong conversation to be having. It's not about whole generations. It's about understanding the individual to your right, the individual to your left, what they want, what they need, and tailoring and personalizing how you lead to best serve them in that given season of life. In addition to seasons of life, big life events are going to change your people and change their relationship with work, and in a big way. And what I mean by big life events are the moments that are the highest of highs, like getting married or starting a family, and the lowest of lows, like going through a nasty divorce or losing a loved one. And unlike seasons of life, big life events can happen anytime, at any moment, and can completely change the course of your team member's life or your life. And for me, when I think about big life events, I can't help but think about my mom. I was in my mid-20s building my manufacturing company. At this point, my business was booming. I mean, I felt like I was on top of the world. We just landed our biggest purchase order to date, 7 figures. I went away for a week-long trip to celebrate, and when I came home, I was so excited to see my mom tell her the news. I go over her place. It's early in the morning, 7 a.m. She's still sleeping. I don't make much of it. I plop down on the couch, pour myself some coffee, and I start plugging away on the day. A couple hours go by. I look at my watch, and I thought, a bit odd that my mom's still sleeping, but I don't make much of it. And about 30 minutes later, in my mom walks. She's wearing a green sweater, gray sweats, and she sits down on the couch next to me and she says, Danny, I have to talk to you about something. And I said, Mom, it's so great to see you. I've got to talk to you about something. I've got some pretty amazing business news to share myself. And I'm scrolling on my laptop, about to open this purchase order for $1.4 million. And just as I do, I turn my laptop towards her. She takes her hand, she closes my laptop, and she says, Danny, I need to talk to you now. Now, at this point, I'm thinking like, am I in trouble? Did I do something? There's no way I'm in trouble. I'm in my mid-20s. Could have sworn I closed the toilet seat that morning when I came home over my mom's place. She grabbed my hands and she said, I have cancer. I couldn't even believe the words that just came out of her mouth. Only 5 years earlier, my dad had passed away from cancer, and I knew a difficult road was ahead. About 2 days later, my mom checked into the hospital, but despite the news, something beautiful happened. For the next 2 months, my mom was in the hospital. She'd share these bits of gold with me. Bits of gold that would change the trajectory of my life forever. She'd say things like, life's hard, it's not fair, and life is glorious. So find your glory. She'd say, it's okay to not be okay today, but don't let this moment define you. Let it guide you. And she'd say, you have to decide the life you want to live, no matter what punches life throws your way. In those 2 months, so much happened so quickly. I watched my mom suffer as she got weaker and weaker. When the doctors told us that my mom didn't have much time left, we scrambled to make her last wish come true, to see my oldest sister get married. Less than 24 hours later, my mom's closest friends and my family poured into the hospital. They did my mom's makeup and made her look absolutely beautiful. I watched my sister bravely march through that hospital hallway as she chose to marry the love of her life despite the circumstances. I watched my mom courageously sing and dance from her hospital bed as she cherished every last second of life. My mom would spend her last days dying, showing me how to keep on living. And after only 2 months in the hospital, my mom passed away. And my life would never be the same. You couldn't possibly expect someone who went through that, who lived through that, who witnessed that, who experienced that day after day for 2 months straight, to possibly even remotely return to work only 2 weeks later and be the same person. After my mom passed away, my relationship with work completely changed. And it's not that I stopped caring about my work or my business, because I didn't. But I also began to care about so many other things in addition to my work. My business partner at the time, he didn't understand how to support me through that. And while his intentions were good, he'd say things like, Danny, at least you have your business to focus on. But I didn't want my business. I wanted my mom. Feeling misunderstood for too many years in a row led me to choose to make one of the hardest professional decisions of my life. To walk away from a business that I spent 8 years building, a business that I loved. Look, it's inevitable that your people are going to change. You're going to change. For me, it was my mom, but for your people, it can be anything. A bad breakup, a quiet season of burnout, a diagnosis, a round of layoffs. Your all-star today could be hanging on by a thread tomorrow. But our job as leaders isn't to expect our people to stay the same. It's to recognize that they won't. And when we show up to work, when our people show up to work, to remember we're all carrying a whole world with us on our shoulders. And we combat this by taking the time to constantly connect with our people and understanding what they're going through in any given season of life. So, how do we do this? And how do we do it in a way that actually moves the needle forward in our organizations? Now, I must warn all of you, it's actually incredibly simple, but it does require real effort and intentionality on all your parts. In your leadership practice, I want to invite all of you to make space and time for what I call connection time. And I want to be really clear what connection time isn't, because so often this is one of those things that are misconstrued in the workplace. Now, connection time isn't about having an agenda. It's not about checking in on a project or having an impromptu one-on-one. The goal of connection time is to connect. The goal of connection time is to connect deeply on a human-to-human level. And regardless of how you work, remote, hybrid, in person, I want to just share a glimpse of what this could look like for you and your team. So if you're remote, we need to be a little bit more intentional about creating space and time to connect with our people. Client of mine, they're fully remote. They believe it's the best way to recruit top talent, but they understand the importance of connection time. So every quarter, they rent out a hotel ballroom and they build out like a makeshift office, and they require everyone to come and work there. And they're not there for a training. It's not an offsite. They're there to work during the day together and to connect at night. And, I know maybe not everyone in this room has the resources to put to something like this, but the point is if your workplace is remote first, we need to be more intentional about creating those moments of connection. I love it. There were a lot of crazy dog people here. Some person packed the dog and took them to work that week. Now, if you have the luxury of going to an office, if you're hybrid, don't just come to the office the days you're there and do the same thing you could be doing at home. This is your time to make in-person time invaluable time. So go for a coffee, schedule a team lunch, plan an activity. Do something that your team can only do together in person. And if you have the luxury of going to an office, walk the floor. Spend 5 minutes a day walking the floor. One leader who walks the floor is a guy named Billy. Billy runs a lighting company out in New York, a couple hundred employees, and after exiting my manufacturing company, Billy invited me to his office. He was looking for some help with digital strategy. Thought me, the young guy, could help him. So I go to his office. I show him a couple cool things. And as I'm packing my bag to head home, Billy says, hey, let me give you a quick tour of the facility. And I look at my watch and I'm thinking, I had to tell Billy, quick tour, it sounds good. I don't have too much time. I got to get out of here soon. He says, we'll make it quick. We take 2 steps out of the conference room, and the first person Billy sees, he stops and he's like, Pam, it's great to see you. How's everything going? How's work? How's life? Meet my friend Danny. We take another 2 steps down the hallway and he stops. He's like, Alan, it's great to see you. How's your son like in college? Everything going well? I look at my watch again. I'm thinking Billy said quick tour. Here we are. We've been walking for 35 minutes. I'm still looking at the conference room we were just in. And I'm like, Billy, I got to get out of here. He's like, wait, before you go, I got to show you the warehouse. It's really cool. So I'm like, sounds good. Let's do it. So we walk to the warehouse. And I have to admit, it was pretty cool. It just keeps going and going. The lights trickle on as you walk through. If you yell, there's an echo. And I turn to Billy. I'm like, Billy, where are all the people? He's like, oh, this is our overflow warehouse. We got to go around the block, down the street, and then we'll get to the real warehouse. So we walk outside, we go to this warehouse, and when we get there, it is alive. People packing boxes, shrink wrapping pallets, trucks coming in and out. And as we walk through that warehouse, Billy stops at every single warehouse employee. He knows them by name. He knows some things about them, their children's name. And as we finally wrap the tour of the facility, it hit me. That may have been one of the most important lessons there is when it comes to leadership. Connection matters. It really matters. It does not matter if you are the COO, a VP, a sales associate, a warehouse employee, or front desk associate. Every single person on your team wants to be seen, heard, and supported. They want to know that their voice matters, that their ideas matter, that their contribution matters. Billy, incredibly busy guy, got a lot on his plate. Yet that day, he still took the time to go and walk the floor. And look, we don't need to make it overly complicated. Even just taking 5 minutes a week can literally transform how it feels for your people to show up to work. And here's the thing. When you take care of what matters most, your people, and when you build the conditions for them to succeed, they'll take care of the rest. They'll take care of your customers, your business, and they may even go as far as to make the company mission their own. My friend Nate, who I told you about earlier, former CEO of Gab Wireless, 200 plus employees. They sell safe tech for kids, smartphones and watches without any internet. Well, one of his employees, Lori, said, I want to make my company mission a movement. Lori was only a few months into the job, and a mom from Chicago reached out, and she said, hey, I need to share something deeply personal with you. She said, your watch is not just a watch for my 10-year-old son, it's his lifeline. She said, my son, Michael, he's 10 years old. He has stage 4 cancer, brain tumor. He's had it since he was a little kid. And whenever they go for treatment, they're away for 7 to 10 days. Away from his dad, his classmates, his teammates, his neighborhood friends. He's all alone. And although he has a great relationship with his mom after being away for a couple days, Michael gets extremely lonely. And while he's sitting there undergoing chemo, he's got his Gab watch. It's the one thing they let him have, and he's got it right there on his wrist. And while he's sitting there undergoing chemo, his dad's calling him. His sisters are messaging him. His classmates are calling him saying, "Hey, Michael, we love you. We miss you." She said, "Your watch is not just the watch for my 10-year-old son. It's his lifeline." So Lori, extremely moved by this, she goes to Nate's office. She knocks on the door. She says, "Nate, can I connect further with Michael and his mom?" Nate says, "Have at it." So Lori decides to give 10-year-old Michael a call. They talk for a little bit. On that call, she decides to invite Michael and his family to Park City, Utah to visit Gab's headquarters. She says, "We're going to pay for the whole trip. We're going to go skiing, make snowmen." But most importantly, she was just incredibly excited to meet this young kid named Michael. And that's when Lori came up with an idea that would change not only the lives of the employees at Gab, but together, Michael's life as well. Together, they decided to make 10-year-old Michael the CEO for the day. When Michael arrived, he and Nate had matching outfits. They wore khaki pants, black shirts, fresh Nike Dunks. Michael's request. And Nate told Michael, he said, "Listen, pal," he said, "there's only one rule today." He said, "You legit are the CEO. So you're calling all the shots." So Michael, like any good CEO, said, "Let's see those sales numbers." So they had the VP of sales sprint to his office, print out the quarterly numbers. They gave Michael a stamp that just said CEO, and Michael gave a seal of approval on the quarterly numbers. Next, Michael said, "All my employees must do good and volunteer and help others." So they spent some time in the kitchen making goodie bags for other kids with cancer. About halfway through the day, Michael looked up to Nate, looked at his Gab watch, he tugged him on the shirt, and he went, "Psst, it's recess time. Can we take a 15-minute recess?" So they hopped on scooters, they rode around, they shouted, hey, everybody, we're taking a 15-minute recess." They all met back in the kitchen where they had ice cream sundaes, connected, and had a blast. Towards the end of the day, Michael looked up to Nate and said, "Nate, this is the coolest thing I've ever done." At the end of the day, multiple employees said, "This was the best day of my career." Not best day at Gab, not best day this week or this month, but this was the best day of my career. Other employees said, "I've never cared so much about a mission at a place I worked." As leaders, isn't that what we all want? Isn't that the culture that we're trying to cultivate? What I didn't tell you is this happened during their busiest month, December. A month when they projected to sell 80,000 devices, yet they went on to sell over 125,000 devices. They had every reason to not go to this length or this distance for a customer, mind you, a stranger. But this was bigger than the bottom line. And it reminded everyone why they do what they do. And by the way, you can bet that when people see Lori, a new employee, coming forward with an idea, when they see the leadership team running with it and turning it into a thing, a full day experience, it makes people want to lean in. It makes people know that at that organization, they're truly valued. And in fact, this had such an impact on their culture that they decided to make this an annual event. And I want to just play a quick clip from this past year's CEO.
Would you come to Utah as my guest and be the CEO of Gab for a day?
Yes.
Yes.
I think a good leader is very courageous and makes sure the people they are working for are happy and they are doing their best work I felt nervous and excited because it was my first time being a CEO. So I imagined myself doing great and making the people feel happy.
In my research of studying great leaders, I didn't just interview them, the leaders, but I also interviewed those they served. And what's fascinating is there was a trend amongst those they served. None of them referred to their leader, their manager, or their boss as any of those titles. They all referred to them as mentor, teacher, and sometimes even friend. Actually, I saw this firsthand with my dad. When I was 20 years old, my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and about 7 months later, things weren't looking good. He goes to the hospital, the doctors come into the room. They let him know his treatment didn't work and that he didn't know how much time he has left. A couple hours go by, my dad picks up the phone and he starts making calls. Friends, family, the people he wants to tell the news to directly. And one of those calls was to a man in China named Hu Gang. Now, Hu Gang wasn't family. He wasn't my dad's closest friend. He was an employee. For more than 10 years, my dad and Hu Gang worked side by side. And whenever my dad was in China, 4 months out of every single year, he and Hu Gang were attached by the hip. They did everything together. They traveled together, visited every factory together, designed every product together. When I say everything, I mean everything. So my dad calls Hu Gang up. They talk for a little bit. He let him know that his treatment didn't work, that he'd be canceling his upcoming trip to China, and he didn't know if he'd be making it back. They eventually share their appreciation. They say goodbye, they hang up, and that's that. The next day, I'm sitting in my dad's hospital room. Family is coming in and out. Nurses are checking the monitors. There was just this strange feeling in the room because no one quite knew what to say. And then there was a knock at the door. A man walked in. My dad looked up, confused, then stunned, and then emotional. Because standing in the doorway was Hu Gang. He'd flown all the way from Shanghai to New York. 16 hours. Paid for the ticket out of his own pocket, took time away from his own family. No one from work even knew he was coming. He crossed the world just to say goodbye. When Hu Gang arrived, my dad couldn't believe it. They spent that afternoon reminiscing about the past, laughing as they shared their favorite memories, and eventually crying because they both knew this was it. Before Hu Gang left, he took my dad's hands and said, "Mark, thank you. Thank you. Thank you." My dad looked at him and asked, for what? He said, for being so much more than a boss, for being a mentor, a teacher, and even a friend. Hu Gang let go of my dad's hands. He said his goodbyes. He left the hospital. I was on the next flight out back home to Shanghai that night. Shortly after my dad passed away, Hu Gang chose to leave the company after 10 plus years because he felt his biggest supporter was gone. I was 20 years old, sitting in that hospital room, and looking back, I finally understand what's possible. When you show your people that you see them, when you show your people how deeply you understand them, and when you show your people how much you actually care about them, that it's impossible for them not to feel, they'll go to distances you never imagined possible. Because the real tragedy isn't leaders who don't care. It's leaders who do care and people who never feel it. The question isn't whether you care, because I know you do. The question is, how will you show your people so they feel it? Thank you so much.